Emily's scream split the stillness, a raw sound that rattled the walls. She clutched Noah to her chest, his small body trembling, his voice barely audible as he asked, "Mom, what's happening?" Her reply was shaky. "It's over, baby, it's over." David's face twisted with rage, veins rising on his temples, before he slammed the door so violently that Noah flinched and cried. The echo throbbed through the room like a gunshot, and Emily staggered back, her pulse pounding as the faint wail of sirens cut through the night. She pressed a kiss to her son's hair, whispering, "I won't let him hurt us again," though the words scraped against her fear. Tears blurred her vision as shadows stretched along the hallway, the apartment shrinking into a battlefield of silence and broken promises. Every breath she took was heavy with the weight of betrayal, every heartbeat a desperate vow to shield her child, no matter the cost. Emily sank heavily onto the couch, Noah still pressed to her, his breath shaky against her chest. He whispered, "He's gone, right?" And she answered, "Yes, he's gone," though the lie ached against her throat. She stroked his hair with trembling fingers, clinging as much for herself as for him. Her gaze lifted to the wall of photographs, frozen smiles mocking the reality of shattered promises. Her heart raced with the echo of David's rage, each slam replaying louder in her mind. She whispered, "I'll protect you no matter what it costs." Noah's eyes, wide and glassy, searched hers for certainty, and she pressed her forehead to his, anchoring them both. The silence roared around them, broken only by the faint hum of the lamp, as Emily's fear hardened into something sharper, resolve. The apartment seemed smaller now, air heavy, silence pressing against Emily's ears. She whispered, "We'll be okay," though doubt seeped through every word. Her chest rose sharply, heart racing with fractured memories of David's betrayal. Noah shifted, eyelids heavy with exhaustion, his small hand still clutching her blouse as if letting go would drown him. She kissed his forehead, whispering, "I won't let him take you from me," the promise solidifying in the dark. A shiver ran through her spine, not from fear but from defiance that slowly grew inside her. She rocked him gently, whispering again and again, each vow stitching her broken pieces into armor. Sirens faded into the distance as Emily rose, her arms aching but unwilling to release Noah. She carried him to his room, each step heavy but sure. She whispered, "Sleep, sweetheart, I'll keep watch." His voice broke softly, "Promise?" And she kissed his forehead, whispering, "Always." She tucked him into the bed, sheets rumpled beneath his small frame. She lingered at the doorframe, her hand pressed against the wood, as if anchoring herself. Memories of David's rage sliced into her mind, sharp and fresh. She closed her eyes, whispered, "You will not break me," and in the quiet of the room, her vow hardened into truth. Fiction hummed with the faint buzz of the refrigerator, a lonely rhythm against Emily's pounding thoughts. She sat at the table, head buried in her hands, every sacrifice replaying like an endless reel. Sleepless nights, double shifts, broken promises, each one stacked heavy on her chest. She lifted her face, eyes swollen, yet unyielding. "I will not lose him, not now, not ever," she whispered. The clock ticked louder, each second slicing through the silence. She glanced toward Noah's room, the soft sound of his breathing threading her heart with strength. Resolve tightened in her veins, the grief shifting into steel. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, spilling across Emily's weary face as she sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, untouched before her. She whispered, "One day at a time," though her heart pounded with unease. Noah shuffled in, rubbing his eyes, his small voice asking, "Are we okay, Mom?" She forced a smile, saying, "We'll be fine," but her chest tightened under the weight of uncertainty. At work, her phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor. Cold words reminding her that her job was on the line after missing a shift. She muttered, "Of course, now this." The betrayal of last night clung to her skin like smoke, her mind replaying David's glare, and fear that he would return struck her harder than the morning chill. The office smelled faintly of paper and stale coffee as Emily sat across from her supervisor, Ms. Green, a woman with sharp eyes and an impatient tone. "You can't keep missing shifts, Emily," she said, tapping a pen against her clipboard. Emily clenched her hands in her lap, whispering, "I know, I'll fix it." The words felt hollow. Ms. Green's gaze hardened. "I need employees I can rely on." The walls closed in, every second magnifying her fear of losing the fragile stability she'd built. She walked out with her chest heavy, whispering, "Not now, not when everything depends on this." Outside, the city noise drowned her thoughts, but one remained constant. She could not afford to fall apart. That evening, the apartment felt colder than usual as Emily sat with her best friend, Sarah, on the couch. Sarah, 35, leaned closer, whispering, "You need to fight him. Don't let David push you back into the dark." Emily sighed, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. "I'm already drowning, Sarah. Between work and Noah, I don't have anything left." Sarah's eyes softened but carried a warning edge. "Then you have to find it because he won't stop." Emily stared at the flickering lamp, her chest tightening at the truth in her friend's words. For the first time, she realized that David's betrayal wasn't just the past returning. It was a storm threatening to consume her present. The knock on the door jolted Emily, her heart racing as she hurried to answer. On the other side stood David, his smile cold, papers in hand. "Custody hearing," he said flatly, thrusting the envelope into her palm. Her fingers shook as she opened it, reading the words that confirmed her worst fear. Noah peeked from behind the couch, whispering, "Mom?" Emily forced a calm tone. "It's okay, baby, go back to your room," though her stomach twisted violently. David's smirk lingered as he turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Emily slammed the door shut, pressing her back against it, whispering, "I won't let him win." The war she dreaded had just begun. Emily sat on Noah's bed that night, the envelope resting on her lap like a curse. Noah leaned against her shoulder, whispering, "Will he take me away?" She swallowed hard, replying, "No, sweetheart, I'll never let that happen." Her chest burned with fear, but she kept her voice steady for him. His small hand slipped into hers, grounding her, and she pressed a kiss to his forehead. When his breathing slowed into sleep, she stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with the reality of what was coming. Courtrooms, accusations, lies. David would drag her through hell, and she had no choice but to fight. She whispered into the dark, "I will protect you even if it breaks me." Emily stepped into the lawyer's office, her hands shaking as she clutched her purse. The smell of leather and paper filled the air as Mr. Carter, a composed man in his 40s, gestured for her to sit. "You understand this won't be easy," he said, voice steady but grave. Emily whispered, "I don't care how hard it gets, I can't lose my son." Mr. Carter studied her face, then replied, "David will fight dirty, and you'll need to be prepared for lies and intimidation." Emily's chest tightened, fear clawing at her ribs, but her eyes hardened. "He's taken enough from me. He won't take Noah." The words felt heavier than stone, but they anchored her resolve as she prepared for the storm ahead. The courthouse loomed like a fortress, cold stone rising against the gray morning sky. Emily walked up the steps, her pulse racing, Noah's hand tucked into hers, Sarah close behind for support. David stood at the top, smirking in a tailored suit, his eyes sharp with arrogance. "Ready to lose," he muttered as she passed. Emily swallowed the sting, whispering to Noah, "Stay close to me." Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, every hallway filled with murmurs of strangers facing their own battles. The courtroom doors felt like gates to another world, one where her strength would be tested like never before. She inhaled sharply, whispering to herself, "You fight for him, no matter what." Emily sat at the plaintiff's table, hands gripping the edge so tightly, her knuckles whitened. Across from her, David leaned back confidently, whispering something to his lawyer with a grin. The judge entered, gavel echoing like thunder, and Emily's stomach twisted. Mr. Carter stood, speaking firmly about her dedication as a mother, but David's lawyer countered with sharp words about instability and unreliable employment. Emily wanted to shout, to defend herself, but she held her tongue, every muscle tense with restraint. Noah's future hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. She lowered her gaze, whispering under her breath, "Stay strong for him." On the witness stand, Emily's voice trembled as she answered questions, every word a battle against David's twisting narrative. His lawyer's tone was sharp, designed to cut. "Isn't it true you've struggled to maintain steady work?" he pressed. Emily swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "I've worked 2 jobs at once to give my son stability." The lawyer smirked, but the judge's eyes softened slightly at her conviction. David leaned forward, his glare burning holes into her back. Emily felt the heat of his contempt, but she straightened her spine, whispering silently, "He doesn't own me anymore." For the first time, she felt her own strength rising. That night, Emily sat at Sarah's kitchen table, exhaustion etched across her face. Sarah poured her tea, whispering, "You were strong today, stronger than you know." Emily sighed, her hands trembling as she held the mug. "He'll never stop, Sarah. He'll keep tearing me down until there's nothing left." Sarah reached across, squeezing her hand firmly. "Then you fight until there's nothing left to give, because Noah is worth it." Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks, but for the first time they weren't only from fear. They carried defiance too. She whispered, "I won't break, not now." Emily walked into the break room at work, exhaustion heavy in her steps. The chatter around her fell silent as 2 co-workers glanced her way, whispering sharply. Her stomach turned when she heard her name tangled with David's. "He said she's unstable," one murmured. Emily froze, anger rising in her chest. She whispered, "He's spreading lies." Her phone buzzed with a notification, a social media post filled with cruel words, her private struggles twisted into weapons. Shame burned her cheeks, but beneath it, fire ignited. She thought of Noah, his small voice asking if she could keep him safe. Emily clenched her fists, whispering, "This ends with me." That evening, Sarah stormed into Emily's apartment holding a printed email. "He's digging up your past, Em," she said, slamming it on the table. Emily's heart dropped as she read words about unpaid bills and hospital visits long buried. "How did he even get this?" she whispered, hands trembling. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Someone close gave it to him. He isn't fighting fair." Emily sank into a chair, the walls closing in, memories of mistakes she'd tried so hard to bury flooding back. Her chest tightened, fear pressing down. She whispered, "If he uses this, I'll lose everything." Emily opened an old box in her closet, hands shaking as she pulled out faded photographs and hospital records she had hidden away. Noah's laugh echoed faintly from the other room, grounding her as tears slipped down her face. "I tried to keep this from him," she whispered, fingers brushing the paper like it could wound her. In one photo, her younger self smiled beside David, a mask that now felt unbearable to look at. She whispered to herself, "That's not who I am anymore." Fear pressed heavily on her chest, but there was also a strange relief in confronting the shadows she had avoided for years. The next day in court, David's lawyer slid copies of those old records across the table, his smirk cutting sharper than the words he spoke. "Evidence of instability," he declared. Emily's breath hitched, her palms slick with sweat as the judge examined them. Mr. Carter rose swiftly, voice firm, "Your Honor, these are dated, irrelevant, and paint an incomplete picture." Emily forced herself to meet the judge's eyes, whispering, "I am not that woman anymore." The words weren't just defense. They were truth she finally accepted. For the first time, David's gaze faltered, his smirk dimming as her strength began to shine through. That night, after the hearing, Emily stood on her balcony, city lights glowing below like distant stars. Sarah joined her, silent at first, then whispering, "You didn't break." Emily exhaled, eyes glistening with exhaustion but steadiness in her voice. "He can't use my past to own me anymore." Sarah touched her arm gently. "Then he's losing his grip." Emily glanced inside where Noah slept peacefully, his face calm despite the storm surrounding them. A tear slipped down her cheek, but this time it carried relief instead of despair. She whispered, "He doesn't control me, not anymore." Emily returned home late, exhaustion clinging to her like a second skin. As she unlocked her door, she froze. A man stood at the end of the hallway, his figure partly hidden by shadows. He stepped forward, revealing silver-streaked hair and tired eyes. "Emily," he said softly, voice cracked with age. "It's me, Uncle James." Her heart slammed against her ribs. Memories of him vanishing from her childhood clawed at her. She whispered, "Why now, after all these years?" He lowered his gaze. "Because I've been watching, and you need me now more than ever." Confusion warred with anger inside her, but something in his weary face told her he carried truths she wasn't ready for. Inside the apartment, the tension pressed as James sat at the table across from Emily, his hands clasped like a man confessing. Noah peeked curiously from his room, but Emily waved him back gently. "You abandoned us," she whispered, her voice sharp. James' eyes glistened. "I thought staying away was protecting you, but I was wrong." He slid an envelope across the table, documents filled with information about David's past dealings. "He's darker than you know," James said. Emily's hand hovered over the papers, her chest rising and falling with dread. She whispered, "Why help me now?" James' reply was low but steady. "Because you're family, and I failed once, I won't fail again." Emily opened the envelope, her fingers trembling as she scanned the documents. Photos of David with unfamiliar men, financial records, and signed statements painted him in shadows deeper than she imagined. "He's been hiding money," James explained, leaning closer. Emily whispered, "He's been preparing for this fight all along." Rage and betrayal surged inside her, but so did clarity. For years she thought she was powerless, yet here was proof David was not untouchable. Noah's laughter drifted faintly from his room, a reminder of why she had to endure. Emily's hands shook as she whispered, "If this is real, it could save us." James nodded firmly. "It's very real, Emily." Later, standing on her balcony, Emily stared out at the city lights, clutching the documents against her chest. Sarah arrived after Emily's call, her eyes widening as Emily explained. "Your uncle gave you this, after all this time?" Sarah asked cautiously. Emily nodded, whispering, "I don't trust him, but I can't ignore this." Sarah placed a hand on her shoulder, voice calm but firm. "Use it. David's mask is cracking, and this could shatter it." Emily exhaled shakily, whispering to herself, "I never wanted to dig this deep." Yet as the cool night air rushed around her, strength replaced doubt. The past had resurfaced, but this time she would wield it as a weapon. That night, Emily tucked Noah into bed, his small hand resting in hers as he asked softly, "Mom, are we safe?" Her heart clenched, but she smiled gently. "Yes, baby, we're safer than before." As his eyes drifted shut, Emily whispered, "No one will take you from me." She closed the door quietly, leaning against it, documents clutched tight in her hand. Her reflection in the hallway mirror caught her eye, tired, bruised by battle, but unbroken. She whispered, "You're stronger than you believe," though this time the words were meant for herself. The war was far from over, but for the first time she felt she had the means to fight. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Emily sat at the plaintiff's table, clutching the folder James had given her. Her heart pounded in her ears as David entered, his smirk confident, his lawyer whispering in his ear. The judge called order, and the air grew heavier than stone. Mr. Carter rose, placing the documents on the bench. "Evidence of hidden accounts and fraudulent behavior," he declared. David's grin faltered for the first time. Emily's breath hitched, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. She whispered under her breath, "This ends tonight." The judge leaned forward, brows raised, the silence slicing sharper than any accusation. David's lawyer leapt to his feet, voice booming. "Objection! These documents are fabricated." But the judge raised a hand, cutting him off. Mr. Carter's voice stayed calm. "We can trace every dollar, every false statement." Emily gripped the edge of the table, her nails biting into wood, as David's face twisted with anger. He shot her a glare, his eyes like knives. Emily whispered, "You don't scare me anymore." The judge ordered the bailiff to secure the documents for review. David slammed his palm against the table, muttering curses, but for the first time, his mask cracked. Emily inhaled deeply, strength surging inside her chest. When Emily took the stand, the room felt like it shrank around her. David's lawyer's words cut like blades. "Isn't it true you've been unstable in the past?" Emily's throat tightened, but she steadied herself. "Yes, I struggled, but I worked through it. And I've raised my son with love and sacrifice." David leaned forward, voice dripping venom. "You're lying, Emily. You're unfit." Her chest burned, but she lifted her chin, whispering into the microphone, "I am not afraid of you anymore." Gasps rippled through the gallery, the weight of her defiance echoing louder than any insult hurled her way. The tension broke when James entered the courtroom, called as a witness. His weathered hands clutched more files, his voice firm as he testified. "David has been hiding assets for years. I've tracked him." Emily's jaw dropped, her chest filling with both fear and gratitude. David shot up, shouting, "Lies, he abandoned this family." The judge banged the gavel, demanding order. James continued, eyes locking on Emily. "I failed her once. I won't fail again." Emily's throat tightened, tears rising. For the first time, she felt her past and present colliding in one moment of undeniable truth. The judge's gavel struck again, silencing the chaos. "This court will deliberate," he announced, but Emily barely heard the words. Her chest heaved as she locked eyes with David across the room. His smirk was gone, replaced by a glare filled with desperation. Emily whispered to herself, "You are losing him." Noah's small face flashed in her mind, his trust, his hope, his fragile innocence. Emily's hands trembled, but her spine stayed straight. She whispered again, firmer, "You won't win." The storm wasn't over, but tonight she had seen David's mask break, and for the first time, she believed victory was possible. The courtroom was silent when the judge returned, papers in hand. His voice cut through the air with measured finality. "Custody will remain with Emily Parker." The words struck like lightning, relief flooding her veins as tears spilled unchecked. Across the aisle, David slammed his fist, his lawyer pulling him back as whispers spread through the gallery. Emily pressed her palms together, whispering, "Thank you," though she wasn't sure if it was to the judge, to God, or to herself. Noah's face filled her thoughts, his smile, his trust, his fragile hope. For the first time, Emily believed they had a future untethered from fear. Outside the courthouse, the sky broke open with rain, washing the steps slick. Emily held Noah's hand as Sarah shielded them with an umbrella. Noah looked up, his voice small but clear. "We won, right, Mom?" Emily crouched, pulling him into her arms, her tears mingling with the rain. "Yes, sweetheart, we won. We're free." James lingered nearby, his gaze heavy with regret and quiet pride. Emily met his eyes and gave a small nod, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. For the first time in years she felt lighter, as though the chains of the past had cracked beneath the weight of her fight. That evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where despair once weighed her down. Now the custody papers lay signed in her favor, a symbol of survival rather than defeat. Sarah poured them both tea, her voice soft. "You did it, Em." Emily smiled faintly, exhaustion etched across her face. "We did it." The apartment hummed with quiet, Noah's laughter faintly drifting from his room. Emily closed her eyes, letting the sound fill her chest like music. For the first time in years she felt the possibility of peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the strength to face it. Later, Emily stood at Noah's doorway, watching him sleep peacefully, his chest rising and falling in rhythm. The room glowed faintly from a nightlight shaped like a star. She pressed her hand to the doorframe, whispering, "I promised I'd keep you safe." Her chest swelled with quiet pride, the scars of the past still raw but no longer defining her. She kissed her fingertips and touched them gently to his forehead before stepping back. For the first time she wasn't holding her strength in fear, she was holding it in love. And love, she realized, was enough to keep them both standing. The apartment was quiet as Emily stood in the kitchen, gazing out the window at the rain-slicked city shimmering under streetlights. She placed her hand gently on Noah's closed door, whispering, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." She sat down at the table, letting a real smile break across her face for the first time in years. It wasn't the smile of survival but of belief. The storm had passed, but the road ahead stretched long and uncertain. Still, for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She whispered again, steady and sure, "We'll be okay."